Well met, adventurers! Using homebrew monsters in your games not only unlocks a whole new avenue of creativity, but with the custom creatures that you create, you can also tailor encounters so that they perfectly challenge your players, but can introduce new abilities or mechanics that your players may have not seen before, so it will even keep the veteran adventurers on their toes. So let's get into some homebrew monster ideas. Yes, 'tis I, Nathaniel Gomezian, shopkeeper and proprietor of Gaming Treasure Chest. And as I said, today's video is all about homebrew monsters and some that you can throw at your players and have a little bit of fun with. These ideas, I will say, are quite heavily, whenever I come up with things like this, there is sometimes heavily influence from TV, games, films, other sources of media and whatnot that help to create and influence these kind of things that I throw at my players, which I'm sure is the same with a lot of different DMs out there and whatnot. So I will be referencing where some of these ideas have come from and helping explain them, especially one that's been a complete rip-off. So I will go over them for you so you can get an idea of maybe a little bit of the creative process. But anyway, let's get into the first one. So I have the monster manual in front of me here. Now obviously there's going to be a new monster manual coming out that nobody knows what the hell's going to be in there, but I'll be trying to reference some of these things within this book that can kind of help with the creative process in terms of when it comes to stats and different things that go with these monsters. Now obviously when it comes to stats, I will admit that I personally don't really go full in on stats because there's something that I create myself that I want to throw at my players. It also depends on what level they are, so I will admit that I kind of custom tailor my monsters when it comes to what kind of level the party is that I'm throwing this at, because if it's an idea that I really want to throw at them, I don't want to make it too challenging. So basically what I'm saying is that if I was going to be throwing this at a level 10 party, the stats in terms of the DCs and the AC of the monster and health and whatnot would be very different from if I was throwing this monster at a level 20 party. So that's what I'm trying to say in terms of the fact that I won't be giving you a full-on stats, but rough ideas that you can kind of work with, and hopefully it will make sense. So as I said, the first monster is actually one which I think is really fun, and it's really particularly fun if you have a role-play heavy group, and it is basically kind of a cross between a mimic and an intellect devourer, but we're kind of changing the intellect devourer in a manner of speaking because it is an emotion devourer. So this thing can disguise itself as anything, and it basically is trying to drain the party of different emotions, which is where the roleplay aspect of this comes into play. So the inspiration for this creature actually comes from a British sci-fi series, quite an old one now, called Red Dwarf. And in Red Dwarf there is actually 2 different episodes, I can't remember which series they're in, but there are 2 different episodes where the crew faces this kind of creature that can transform itself into anything and basically drains them of different emotions, which then obviously massively dramatically changes their characters. And in one of these episodes they refer to this being as an emo hawk.
The gun! The emo hawk's the gun! God, that was close. I hope you're right, because if you're not, we just flushed away our only gun.
So if you want to call this creature an emo hawk, you can do. I'm just going to call it an emotion devourer because that's just easier for me to process in terms of telling you and explaining what the thing does. So this creature's main thing is that it is trying to devour emotions. That is what it feeds on. It feeds on the party's emotions or different people's emotions, and like I said, that's where it gets its sustenance. And so what is important to note about this monster is it's not really a tacky kind of front-facing monster kind of thing. It is more of a stealth monster, and so it disguises itself as different things to get itself closer to its targets. In this case, the party. So there is different scenarios that you can put this in terms of the fact that maybe when they're camping at one night, this thing kind of slips into their campsite and tries to go after some of the members who are sleeping. Now you could do this in terms of the fact that they can try to do if there's somebody on watch, they can do a perception roll, and if they don't roll too high, then this thing can get in on one of the sleeping members and can obviously you'd go with passive perception, but let's face it, most people's passive perception is not the best, and this thing can can drain somebody's emotion. And the way that it does that is that it like attaches like a tendril or something along those lines and makes its victim feel an emotion, a really strong emotion, and basically by making it feel that, it devours that emotion and removes it from that person.
This is your fault, Crichton.
My fault?
We were supposed to stick together. You let the cat run off alone.
But it wasn't, I mean...
He trusted you. Now look at him.
Oh, please, I feel so... guilty!
And if you go with this scenario of them getting attacked during their sleep, what you can do is when the players wake up in the morning, you can sneakily talk to that player and tell them that their character no longer feels whatever emotion it was that was devoured. When I do this, I like to do it as a kind of dream thing, which is why I say that like they were asleep. You can say that one of the abilities of the monster is like basically like the sleep spell, that it can try to make things fall asleep, that they basically have to do a constitution saving throw to see whether or not they fall asleep or not, and basically if they fall asleep, they can prey on their victim and basically like make them live an emotion. So what I do when I use this is that it's a kind of dream that the character is going through, and I explain that to the player, and then I ask them, what is the greatest emotion that you're feeling at this moment in time? And that is what the emotion devourer takes away. So for example, one of the characters in the party I used this against was a sorcerer deep gnome. And basically, in short, in their backstory, there's a whole thing about they used to be like a kind of slave for the drow who had them mining in a cave, like being like a deep gnome. Eventually they ended up escaping and getting like sorcerer powers, but basically when this thing attached onto them, they were brought back to when they were working for these drows and basically like mining in a cave, and like the idea of like their despair basically being there, and that they reached out their hands towards their drow master to cast like a magic spell, being a sorcerer, but no energy flew through their hands or nothing, like they didn't feel anything and they felt powerless, and that now they were back, basically, all of the things they experienced had just been a dream itself, and that they were back in the mines and kind of thing, and like they were back working for this drow. And I said to the player, what is the most emotion that your character will be feeling at this moment in time? And he said fear. So this thing basically removed their fear. And what I loved so much about this is that the player worked with it so much in terms of the fact that obviously being a sorcerer, most of the time like they were like a backline fighter, putting spells in while the fighter and barbarian were like main frontline combat. But because they had their fear removed from them, when we ended up in a combat situation, this sorcerer basically just went crazy and went straight into the middle of combat and was like near enough like next to people, like teleporting next to them, like casting like fear to make them run away from them. It was crazy because obviously it's not normally how that player would use their character, and that's what was so fun about it. As I said, this is why if you've got a very roleplay heavy group, removing emotions can be really fun, like to see how they now play those characters differently. If they've got like a very vain character, taking away that vanity can be interesting to see how they play it, like if it's like a bard or something like that. Taking away maybe devotion from a cleric can be like interesting to see. There was actually a thing whereby the barbarian of my campaign got caught by this, and it actually took away their rage, which was, or took away their anger, which was very interesting because obviously that's the whole thing that barbarians go off. I will say that I didn't punish this player too much. I said that instead of going into a rage, what they went into was very accentuated joy. So they could still go into a rage and basically, but it was a happy rage more than so just absolute joy as they were going into combat, because I didn't want to remove any of their actual mechanics. So that's something that you can kind of like a workshop and work out with your party, depending on what kind of emotions you take away. I don't really want to take away their ability to use any of their actual like abilities kind of thing, but it's just fun to see how they role play certain situations. So that's what this creature is all about. But getting back into stats and abilities, it is very closely associated to the Mimic, obviously, because it does a lot of like a shape changing and false appearance to look like other objects to kind of like hide itself from the party, because its whole thing is that it wants to hide. Whereas a Mimic, though, is more strength based because it's all about grappling and wanting to adhere to people that then force them to be grappled, which is where like the strength of a Mimic comes into play. This thing is more kind of intelligence based, and it's kind of got a little bit of like the double ganger kind of thing, whereby they can know certain memories and whatnot of the party by being close to them, which is then how it can utilize them to create these false dreams which can ignite an emotion that they devour. So it is more intelligence based than strength based. I would probably say that it's quite a weak creature. Its whole thing is more about trying to hide itself and blend in and camouflage. It won't be trying to adhere and attach to the players because it doesn't really want to be like involved and in their face and trying to eat them like a mimic would be. It is only after their emotions, so it is more about trying to hide and camouflage itself. So it's going to be a lot of perception rolls and whatnot from your party to try and find this thing, or maybe the deduction, investigation. Wait a minute, was that object there before kind of situation. Obviously this can lead to some kind of paranoia as well, which obviously is what using mimics can do.
It's the barrel! Sorry, false alarm.
The chain.
It's moving! Sorry. Sir, try and remain calm. You're experiencing a classic knee-jerk paranoid reaction to a terrorist situation. It's essential at this time that we hit the wall! Shame overload.
Now what you can do is you could do this in separate ways. You can either do it that when they kill the emotion devourer, that it just gives them their emotions back, because it basically is released back into the world. Or you could do it that they do actually have to end up going to a temple or using a greater restoration or something along those lines to restore their personality, their emotions back to normal. You can say that they know that there is something kind of missing. They sense there is something missing from their person. They just can't tell what it is because they can no longer feel that emotion. So, but you can let them know that their character is aware that something is amiss and wrong. But as I said, how you decide to go about that is up to you. If it's a very low level party, I would probably recommend just when you kill this thing, they get their emotions back, because it might be harder for them to maybe spend coin on a greater restoration spell if they've got go to a temple that wants to charge for it. Some temples might just do it for free. You're also going to just have a cleric on the team who will be able to help with a greater restoration or something along those lines. Even if you want to go with maybe remove curse, could also do the same kind of thing. You can workshop this to make giving back their emotions however you want. Maybe that can go down a certain different quest line that maybe you want to throw at your party. But obviously I'm just telling you about the monster in this video, so how you choose to utilize that is up to you. I said its whole thing is mostly going to be that it's trying to ambush the party, and it's definitely going to be trying to ambush the members separately, because as I said, this is very kind of a weaker creature. It's not going to be trying to go head on against the whole party. I said it's going to try to get them when they're asleep, or it's going to try and get them when they're separated. So it's going to try and maybe separate the party out in some way, maybe somehow leading different tracks in different directions, trying to split the party members. And as I said, using a sleep kind of spell and whatnot to kind of get the emotions. Now what you can say is that when it attaches one of its tendrils or whatever, it basically starts to absorb the emotion immediately. You could describe what the player is feeling to ask them what emotion is being taken, but basically what they're experiencing is actually happening instantaneously of them being touched by this creature's tendril kind of thing. So it's a very fast process. So basically it can grab an emotion and then move the hell away, rather than saying that it's grabbed onto somebody and stealing an emotion, but that's taking time, which allows another party member to basically do so. So it takes an action, if you like, to remove an emotion kind of thing. But as I said, you can also have it so that it does have some kind of small attacks, and then trying to kind of run away and hide is its main kind of thing that this is trying to do. But anyway, let me know what you think about this idea in the comment section down below. But let's get into the second monster. So the second homebrew monster that I have for you today is actually kind of an interesting one, which is based off of what people do roughly around this time of year. Let's face it, it's Halloween and whatnot. I don't know if you've seen these, but I have, and I massively enjoy them. It is the pumpkin beholders. And so that is what this creature is. It is a pumpkin beholder, and you can say that it's kind of out in whatever way kind of it makes sense, in terms of fact maybe there's a lot of residual magic or something that's near a pumpkin patch, which has made these things form together and basically turn into a beholder. Maybe there was a beholder that was killed in the past at some point and buried somewhere, and basically it's become farmland now, and they've basically planted pumpkins, and now somehow the soul of that beholder has ended up into these pumpkins somehow and has now become this pumpkin beholder. And what I love about this is that it is taking a standard, like what's kind of a very scary monster being a beholder, and like making it a little bit more ridiculous but still scary and whatnot. It's more just the inspiration of seeing all these lovely pictures of people doing it. I'm hoping to get some pumpkins and make my own one, so potentially I'll be posting pictures of that, just because I really love the idea and I just think it's really a fun concept to do with pumpkins. So it will have mostly the stats of the standard beholder, but obviously you can tweak them however you want. Now, because the pumpkin beholder is obviously like a kind of plant-based kind of creature, I decided to look through the book and see other different things that were like similar, and obviously the shambling mound is potentially one like the closest thing, which is basically like a big mound made of like plant-like material that was actually brought to life by like a lightning strike, is basically like the lore which goes into it, which gives them a particular ability called lightning absorption, which basically means that anytime they are subjected to lightning damage, they take 0 damage and instead regain hit points equal to that damage. And I like the idea of that, and so that is why for the pumpkin beholder we're going to throw in a thing which is like basically like radiant damage, because radiant damage, like light kind of damage, with plants like that helps them grow. So instead of taking damage from radiant damage kind of hits and whatnot, it actually takes 0 radiant damage from any sources that come to it, and that actually heals the creature as well. Now I will say like I definitely have something in there which like allows your players maybe to not go into the battle. I don't know how you would do this. Maybe have like a couple of clerics trying to fight this thing using something like some kind of like a holy kind of thing, and that it looks like it's not actually doing any damage to the creature and it's instead like healing up some of the wounds around its pumpkinness. Or you just have it that the players find that out as they're attacking. Obviously it depends on what your party is made of, if there's a cleric in the party or a paladin or whatever, but basically like I feel like that's something which you should let them know. But I do like the idea of it in terms of having a type of damage which actually heals the creature rather than doing damage to it, and because that comes off of another kind of plant-like creature, I thought I'd include it in this one. So that's part of this pumpkins beholder's like kind of makeup and character. But it's going to be different in the way that it's kind of like rays work, because obviously if you read through all the different like a beholder rays that it's got, I do like them, but in the rays that it currently has in the book, it's very much centered around dex saves. I did actually note down how many of each different kind of save that there is, so I will very quickly go through it with you. So in the standard beholder rays, there are 3 wisdom saves, 2 constitution saves, 4 dex saves, and 1 strength save, all adding up to a grand total of 10, because basically the idea is that you roll a d10, and that's basically like which rays used, which I do like the idea of that, because it still leaves it down to chance which rays are going to be used against your players. And obviously with the standard beholder, I believe on their turn they get 3 rays, and it's always different rays, so if you roll the same number you re-roll basically until you get 3 different rays that can attack, and as a legendary action they can use one of those rays at random, like as a legendary action, so randomly they'll just throw down a different ray that they can attack somebody with. As I said, I do love a beholder, but I feel like, you know, it's very much like dex save based, and there should be like a few different things in there, and especially with this pumpkin one, we're going to be throwing in a few different like variations so that you're using a more widespread of different saves, because let's face it, we want to be throwing in a charisma save in there because there's no charisma saves to the standard beholder, and also maybe an intelligence saving throw, like so these are the ones which I've got for you. And I will say that I would like to shout out this person who, when I was researching this, I actually saw that back in 2018 they put down different alternatives that you can use for beholder rays, and I did like some of them, so I have thrown some of them in here, but I just want to do a shout out to them. I will actually put a link down to this page down below, because I think it was very informative, and as I said, it did influence some of the ideas that I used, and obviously give credit where credit is due, so well done to them. I mean, I can't say their name, but still. So when it comes to the rays for this pumpkin beholder, we're going to throw a couple of charisma ones in there. So number 1, we're going to throw in like banishment, so that if this thing kind of like targets you, it has the ability to kind of banish a creature, which banishment is a charisma saving throw, and the banishment basically sends them whatever plane you want to, be it like the Feywild or wherever you think makes sense, like basically to banish a creature to. But banishment is obviously concentration based, so if the pumpkin beholder takes like damage and fails its save, that's what brings the player back. But I do still like the idea of having a charisma saving throw in there. Another charisma saving throw is kind of like similar, but keeping the player in the same place, because different, like basically if you look it up, charisma saving throws are basically most of the time about the person either like leaving the plane that they're on or leaving their body kind of thing when it comes to like maybe like possession or things along those lines. And so the second charisma one is Sever Spirit. And what happens with this one is when the ray hits, it basically like separates the spirit from the body, so their body like basically crumbles to the floor, and their spirit is still there basically like in astral form, and it cannot re-enter the body until basically like they make the charisma saving throw to reconnect themselves to their body. So this is one of those ones whereby it is a saving throw that they will continuously do on their turn, like many other saving throws, to try and get themselves like back in their body. As I said earlier on in the video, I'm not actually throwing down DCs for this. You can decide what you want the DCs to actually be, because as I said, it very much is dependent on your party and their level and what kind of challenge you actually want to make this. So that's the reason why I'm not actually going to put down solid DCs here. If you want to, you can obviously look at the standard beholder and check what the DCs are on that and kind of like decide where you want to place these ones here. Let's get into another ray, which basically is one which I believe the beholder already has, which is the Fear Ray, which causes fear into the creature that it is using, which basically means that it cannot move closer to the pumpkin beholder on its turn, and that is a wisdom saving throw, which leads on to the next ray, which is yet again another wisdom saving throw, which is, I'm going to call it the pumpkin ray. And the idea of this one is that it is trying to use polymorph on the person that it is targeting and basically to turn them into a pumpkin. Now this is kind of like the petrifying ray that the beholder currently has, whereby it petrifies them and potentially can turn them into stone. So what happens is that with that one, it hits you with the ray. You've got to try and make a saving throw. If you fail, then you're still struggling against it on your next turn. On your next turn, you've got to make another saving throw, and if you fail both of them, then you're petrified. With this one, very similar, is that obviously you start, if you fail your first one, then it starts taking effect. If you fail your second one, you turn into a pumpkin like polymorph. But like with the petrification ray, if you just succeed on your first one, it doesn't take any effect at all and they don't turn into a pumpkin. This is actually slightly better than the petrification ray, because obviously when you're petrified, it takes a little bit more like a greater restoration or something to get somebody back up, whereas if somebody is polymorphed, all you've got to do is reduce their hit points to 0 and they come back. So basically somebody just has to, on their turn, attack the pumpkin, which, let's face it, it's not going to have many HP points, so you can near enough get the person back up and running in the fight. It's just more of like a minor inconvenience, but it was also one that I thought was really funny to put in there, the idea of turning somebody into a pumpkin. So that's the reason why that is one of the rays which is in this one. Now I will say I will be keeping the charm ray, which is like the standard one, which is on a standard beholder, which obviously like charms its target if they fail, and that is obviously a wisdom saving throw, so in there with the wisdoms. So the strength saving throw, because we are going to throw a strength saving throw in there like what's on the actual proper beholder, but this one is actually going to be like, a ray of vines, and the idea is that the vines are going to come and try to like engulf the player and like paralyze them. So it's going to basically like wrap themselves around and try to paralyze the player so that they can't do anything. So they've got to make a strength saving throw to break themselves out of the vines, which are trying to like basically stop them from moving. And obviously what you can do is if they fail, then they get wrapped up in vines, and each time on their turn they've got to try and make a strength saving throw to break out and like be free of the vines which are currently kind of like holding them in place. They can't really do anything else on their turn apart from trying to do that. So that would be the strength saving throw. Obviously if they just succeed straight away, nothing happens and they can carry on with their turn. So for the next ray, we're going to throw something in that the other beholder doesn't have at all, which is an intelligence saving throw. And this one is going to be psychic damage. So basically it's going to be like a psychic stun ray where it's going to try and hit them mentally. And if they fail their intelligence saving throw, they take psychic damage and are also stunned. And the idea of this is on each of their turns, yet again, they can make another intelligence saving throw to be able to like knock themselves out of being stunned and get themselves back in the fight. What I will say about this is that if they fail, they still take half the psychic damage, because we do still want to be throwing in some of the damage aspects that these rays can do, because there are a number of different rays that the standard one has which just does damage. So this is going to be what's going on with that one, and so that is the intelligence saving throw. So the constitution saving throw in this one is a poison ray. So basically it will hit the player and they've got to make a constitution saving throw, and basically if they succeed they only take half the poison damage, but if they fail they take the poison damage and also are infected with the poisoned condition, which is one of those things which I just think is always fun to throw at them in combat, because it gives them disadvantage on their attack rolls and also ability checks if that ends up becoming a thing while they're fighting this thing. But mostly the problem is that it's going to cause disadvantage on their attack rolls. Now obviously every single turn they can try to make another constitution saving throw, and if they succeed they can break out of being poisoned. So on to the dex saving throws now. Yet again we are going to be throwing in one of the ones which is on the standard beholder, which is like the slowing ray, which basically if it hits it affects them with the slow spell. So if you want to you can go through like what the slow spell does, but basically it means that like they can only perform an action or a bonus action on their turn. It reduces their speed by half, and I believe that's everything. I can't remember. There might be something else which goes on with the slow spell, but that is basically like the main thing. So it basically like slows down the person, only gives them either a bonus action or an action on their turn rather than both, which then like and also there's something to do with spells as well on that, whereby like it takes them longer to cast a spell, I believe. But anyway, that is the slow one. Obviously it's a dex saving throw. If they succeed then they don't have to worry about that, but if they fail they are affected with the slow spell kind of effects which happen to them. And then the second dex based ray is just going to be an acid ray, where basically like it's an acid attack which does a significant amount of damage, and basically if they dex save then they can like avoid all that damage entirely, or if you want to, you can have it that they take half damage, but on this one, I'm going to say this is going to be quite a lot of damage, because if you look through the different ones which are on a standard beholder, there is like one which does like a lot of damage. I think that you can just avoid it if you dex save from it. If you look through some of the other ones as well, basically with these, you can choose which ones you want to use out of what I give you, or if you just want to use certain ones which are on the standard beholder one, you can mix and match and decide, or you can just come up with different rays entirely if you want to. That's where the joy of this one kind of comes in, and that's why I kind of like the beholder, because it adds so much more room for creativity. But obviously the difference is with the pumpkin beholder compared to the normal one, obviously the normal one is mostly based on dex, whereas this one kind of evenly puts the different things, and it also includes an intelligence saving throw. It also includes charisma saving throws, which I just like adding, so it's a little bit more varied in terms of the saving throws that the people have to make. You can place them however you want, and obviously if you want to include the death ray from the standard beholder you can do. It's just I said these are the ones that I thrown in there. If you want to include another constitution saving throw, you can swap one of these ones out for a little bit more of a harsher one in my opinion, which is the fatigue ray, which basically puts a level of exhaustion on whoever it targets. The reason why I call it a more harsher one is because basically if you read the different levels of exhaustion by giving a multiple, if the same person gets hit by that one multiple times, it can create either lead to their death if they get hit by 6 of them, because I believe it's 6 levels of exhaustion you die. What I will say with the exhaustion one, if you do it, is that it hits them and it affects them for maybe D4 rounds, because that way it should be harder for them to amass all of the exhaustions to potentially die. But obviously you can do that how you want. So if you hit somebody with it, they roll a D4, oh, for 3 rounds they're going to be affected with this exhaustion. They get hit again, so they're on 2 exhaustion things, and they roll to see how long that one's going to last. But after the 3 rounds are up, they lose that first level of exhaustion, so they go down. Like I say, they are getting themselves slightly better as the rounds go on. But obviously if they continuously get hit by it, that could potentially become a problem. So that's why I didn't include it in my list of ones. But if you wanted to include a fatigue ray, then I guess you can do, where you're adding levels of exhaustion in there. But I just think that the pumpkin beholder is just a really fun idea. I especially just love the idea of the pumpkin ray, of being able to polymorph somebody into a pumpkin. It's more of a fun one. It's definitely obviously because we're in the Halloweeny time, it's definitely a more Halloweeny based kind of monster, but I still think it's a fun homebrew thing. And as I said, there's so many different things that you can do with it, being the lore of how it came into existence, the different rays, however you want to play with them, and obviously the different quest lines that you can put into it, as to them having to deal with it, or they stumble upon it, or the fact that it's something which is just turned up that nobody understands, in a cave or something, and nobody's been able to venture further in there, or people have not made their way back, blah blah blah, and that this is what's in there. I don't know, there's so many different things that you can do to incorporate this, and indeed any of the monsters, that I just really like the idea of this one. It's a lot of fun. I've not actually run this one personally, but as I said, when I was coming up with it, because it's obviously the time of year, I just thought it was a nice little monster to add in there. So if you do use it, please let me know how it goes. But anyway, into the third monster. So the third homebrew monster you can throw at your players is actually one which is 100% ripped off and 100% inspired by Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And I'm of course talking about the episode that is just called Hush with the Gentleman. So basically what these things do when they come to town is they create a big bubble around it of the silence spell, so no nobody can speak, nobody can say anything, like there's no noise going on, and that just creates a little bit more, as I said, like a fun roleplay kind of things, because it basically means that your players have got to like find different ways of communicating with each other, be it through hand gestures or be it through like them actually like getting like a pen and paper and writing down, and like if you want to, you can actually roleplay this at the table, whereby like you can give them like whiteboards or something like that and just say that it's like a parchment and quill or whatnot, and basically they can write down what they want to say as they like kind of go between each other if they want to. It depends on how your party wants to go with this, whether or not they want to speak or not, but as I said, it can be like a little fun thing that you can throw at your players whereby they can't speak at the table, and so like to communicate what they want to do and what they're trying to do, like they've got to write down. What I will say is that when it comes to combat, just let them tell you, because otherwise combat will last unbelievably long if you have it that they've got to write down, okay, I use this spell or this attack or whatnot, and put it up on the whiteboard. So outside of combat, roleplay wise, when you're actually in the game, you can have it that like everything's silent and that they've got to like write things down. What I will say is they will find it very hard to leave town, because basically if you've watched the episode and whatnot, the gentlemen actually have like these other kind of brutes, if you like, who come with them, and basically like they're the muscle of the group. So you can have it that they're at like a bunch of the exits and maybe they're patrolling the town and such, and so therefore like it makes it harder for the party just to leave the area of effect that this silence kind of like spell is like causing. You could also say that like dispel magic and whatnot doesn't seem to work on it. And bear in mind, obviously, by taking away like speech might actually like very much nerf a lot of your wizards or sorcerers or any spellcaster who requires the verbal component within their spells. And obviously like they can still have like a somatic and material components to be able to do things. And I guess like subtle spell from a sorcerer would also be able to work, because it means that they don't have to require like the verbal components. But that is something to note, that they cannot use any of those things. Now there is ways that you can try like level the playing field, like to say that there's certain spells that you can allow under certain circumstances, but that's completely up to you with how you do it. Because yeah, again, with these kind of things, I don't really want to nerf the player's abilities, because like what I said earlier on with the barbarian who basically had their rage or like anger taken away from them with the emotion devourer, I don't want to take away what makes that character what they do, like, or what they do in combat. I don't want to like nerf what they do. So coming up with some kind of way that there's like certain spells they might be able to still use in some way, like you definitely try and work something out, because you don't want to nerf the player or the characters that much in terms of the fact that make it so they can't do any spells at all. Like there's got to be like something that they can still do, which then like actively helps the party. And basically what the idea of these creatures are, like we're just going to call them the gentlemen because that's what they're called in Buffy, is that they are trying to like harvest hearts for a ritual. So you can have that. That's what they're doing here, is that in the town they are trying to harvest hearts from like different NPCs, people around the town, or maybe even the players, and to basically make this ritual thing happen. And just like in Buffy, what I will say with this is that they cannot be beaten by like standard weapons. What you can do is you can weaken them, and you can make it so that like you can slow them down. So if these things like chasing the party or like try to engage the party in combat, the party can like beat them and like cut limbs off or whatnot, but basically they start to regenerate, and that's the problem, that the party needs to come up with a different way of dealing with this. Now in the show, what happens is there's like this music box that basically that is what has captured everyone's like voices, and like has made this cone of silence. So it's like a music box that if the players can get themselves to, like it's going to be hidden somewhere in the town, mostly like most likely like with a couple of these brutes guarding it. If they smash the music box, it releases the sound back to all the people, and basically it's the sound of screaming is what defeats these things and makes their heads blow up. So you can do something similar if you want, that basically just by like screaming or something along those lines is what kills these monsters. And like I said, it can be quite fun, especially if you're doing like a horror one-shot. The idea of throwing something like this at the party, whereby it is just like taking over a town, nobody can speak, and like coming up with like the fun different ways that they can try to communicate with each other and try to work out the puzzle of this, which is that they have to destroy the box, which then allows them to be able to defeat the monsters. It's a fun little thing that you can throw in. Definitely, I said, like either a side quest or a one-shot. This is a lovely monster to throw at your players. Now, as I said, if they've not seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer or whatnot, or have got no idea what the hell the reference is, you've got to have something in there that they can do like a research at maybe a library or whatever to be able to find this information out, that like that these things basically cannot be defeated by standard weaponry, and that there's a ritual that they're trying to do, and that the only way that people have been able to find to be able to like stop these things in the past, in terms of like they're basically like a fairy tale with a manner of speaking, is that they have to destroy the music box. It seems to be this box which is like a main part of their whole deal, and so by doing so, like I said, that just gives them the hints that allows them to know what's going on here. But just like with the other two, I would love to know what you think about this idea and throwing this at your players, like in terms of the gentleman is definitely, I think, like a fun one shot that you can definitely throw at them. But I would love to hear what you think down in the comment section down below, as well as if you have any homebrew monsters yourself, I would love to hear about them down in the comment section down below. Who knows, they might end up in a video if you allow me the permission to be able to use them, as that is what the whole channel is about like a collaboration, throwing ideas at each other, and being able to give them to our players and have a good time. Speaking of which, about community and such, there is also the Discord channel if you want to join the Discord channel, and I would love to make it into this environment, as I said, where we share ideas and whatnot and have a good time in general. Like I maybe be able to find groups to play Dungeons and Dragons. Please feel free, link is down below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more things like it, then why not consider hitting the subscribe button and the like button and such, and comment and doing all the YouTube algorithm kind of things if you want to. Obviously, don't want you to feel forced, but if you want to help me out, then please feel free to. And obviously, I just want to give back to you guys, because I thank you so much for watching my previous videos, by the way, because honestly the reception I've had has been amazing, so thank you so much for that. If also you would like to maybe get like a gift for somebody at your table and whatnot that's Dungeons and Dragons themed, why not consider hitting up the Etsy store of Gaming Treasure Chest, where there are a bunch of D&D themed like dice holders and dice rollers and such that I have designed myself, and which it 3D printed and such. So if you want to get anything like that, please feel free to head over there, but do not feel forced to make any purchases. As I said, those are just if you want to get a gift for somebody, please feel free to. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and until next time, goodbye.